It's very easy to look on small things and not see the value of what God is doing. You know, in nature, we go outside and we see the tiniest bud that will blossom into something great and beautiful, or an acorn that, if untouched by a squirrel or a child's kicking foot, will become an oak. And we don't despise those things at all, but sometimes we despise small things we can't even recognize as God's greatest work in the smallest things. You know, when I hear people tell me of somebody sick, and they're maybe not making the recovery, they've been fasting for this person and praying, and they're not making the recovery they ought to, they think in their mind. Don't despise the day of small things. You know, the day when you see the person who's been laying in bed sick with just a little bit of a smile or a little light in the eyes, don't despise that. Don't say, well, it's not exactly what I want it to be. Grab hold of that and be thankful for even that. That's the smallest, if it's the smallest thing that God could give you or that person, grab hold of it. If you're sick today, and even if you feel just a little bit better, I want you to remember this scripture. When you wake up in the morning, some of you woke up and you don't have any sickness, and you can't even figure out that God woke you up this morning, opened your eyeballs, gave you breath in your lungs, got your feet to actually go in the right direction, and got you here safely. You know, I think not only is this a message to encourage those who may be feeling like God is not pouring out the Niagara Falls blessings, but it's also a reminder to not be ungrateful to what God has already given. It's easy to do that. When people tell me about somebody in their family who has a dependency issue, whether it's alcohol or drugs, and I don't take this lightly because I've been around enough people who struggle with substance. I know it. I know how cruel it is. If we're just going to talk about alcoholism, alcohol is a very cruel master. Alcohol comes usually as a happy face at first. Arms open, ready to receive you. Jack Daniels is always happy. But after a while, when you become dependent, so I'm not against alcohol. I tell people that. People say, are you for or against? I don't tell people if you drink, you're going to hell. But I do know that there are certain people that it's in their DNA, it's in their frame to be addicted. And once that gets a grip, it's almost like you've been locked into something and you're in a prison, you're in bondage. And I love what Paul says in Romans 8 when he says that God has not given us the spirit of bondage, but the spirit of adoption, literally in the Greek, the spirit of sonship. So maybe you woke up today and you said, today I'm not going to drink. Just today. Don't despise the day of small things. Just the simple utterance of a person who has become dependent to say, I'm an alcoholic, is huge. It's analogous, if you will, to Jacob being confronted with the angel and wrestling all night and being forced to say what he is. I'm heel catcher. For the first time in my life, I'm heel catcher. Don't despise the day of small things. They're not small in God's sight. They may be small to the people around you who don't understand. It's the mother whose son or daughter has finally come home. And you might think, well, there's still a big battle ahead because we don't know how to sort the matter out after the mess of a child running away. Don't despise the day of small things, because it was a large thing that the Father watched over this wandering child of yours. And why would we think God would be any different? In the book of Isaiah and in other prophecies, it is described, Christ is described as taking the lambs into his bosom and carrying them. That means he hears their bleating and he hears their heart beating and he knows exactly where they have wandered off. Is it something to be despised. Now, there are people out there who, what I'm saying to you right now as a congregation, would say, well, why talk about this to the church? Go tell it to the lost people out there. Because there are lost people standing and sitting right in front of me today. Some who don't have the courage even. You know how much shame goes with some of the things that I've said? Failure is the biggest thing. We're so worried about the greatness of our failure. But maybe today you recognize, yeah, my failure is real great, but God's grace is beginning to work on me. I just feel a little bit of the dew, and it's enough.